In the first episode, we have seen how Ustaz Javed Ahmad Ghamidi raised certain questions regarding the narrative on first revelation, which has been recorded by Imam Bukhari in his Al-Jami' al-Sahih and which has primarily been reported by Ibn Shihab Zuhri. Ustaz Javed Ahmad Ghamidi has put forth another narrative, and this narrative has been recorded by Ibn Hisham, the famous historian and the famous biographer of the Prophet. In his book on the biography of the Prophet, Ibn Hisham has recorded a narrative on the authority of Ubayd ibn Umair, who is a tabi'i or a follower, and hence the narrative is a maqtu one, more of an historical nature, in which almost all the questions that were raised on the narrative that was recorded by Bukhari seem to be answered. So he thinks, and his opinion is, that this is the narrative that should be considered to be the narrative which relates the first revelation story. And this is a narrative in which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, actually had met Gabriel in a dream. So the whole incident never took place in the form of a physical appearance or a physical encounter between Gabriel and the Prophet. So this narrative actually shows that all this incident took place in a dream, and the way it has been narrated, it will be seen that the answers which he has raised almost completely. So here is a text of that narrative. According to Ubayd ibn Umair, the Prophet of God used to do itikaf in the Hira cave every year for a month and give food to the indigent who came to him. At the end of his itikaf of that month, the first thing he used to do before returning home was to go to the Kaaba and circumambulate 7 times, or as God willed. Then he would return to his house. This continued to happen until the month arrived in which the Almighty willed to honor him with his blessing in the year he wanted to appoint him a prophet. That month was the month of Ramadan. He went to Hira as was usual to him, and his family was with him. When it was the night in which God honored him with his message and showed mercy to his servants through it, Gabriel came to him with the command of God. The Prophet said, "Gabriel came to me while I was asleep and brought in a coverlet of brocade whereon was something written, and said, 'Read.' I said, 'I cannot read.' He squeezed me so vehemently that I thought I would die. Then he let me go and said, 'Read.' I said, 'I cannot read.' He squeezed me once again so vehemently that I thought that I would die. Then he let go of me and said, 'Read.' I said, 'What should I read?' He again squeezed me so vehemently that I thought that I would die. Then he said, 'Read.' I said, 'What then should I read?' fearing that he would do the same embrace that he had did before. He said, 'Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq, Iqra wa rabbukal akram, alladhi allama bil qalam, allamal insana ma lam ya'lam.' Read in the name of your Lord who has created man from a clot of blood. Read, and your Lord is the most gracious, who has taught by the pen, has taught man that which he knew not. So I read, and he left me. When I got up from my sleep, it was as if these words were firmly written in my heart. So I went out until I was midway on the mountain. At that time I heard a voice from the sky saying, 'O Muhammad, you have been made the messenger of God, and I am Gabriel.' I raised my head up to the sky to see who was speaking, and it was Gabriel in the form of a man, with feet astride the horizon, saying, 'O Muhammad, you have been made the messenger of God, and I am Gabriel.' I stood still, staring at him, neither moving forward nor backward. Then I made my face turn away from him. But whichever direction of the sky I looked, I found him the same. And I remained still, neither progressing nor regressing, until Khadija sent her messengers searching for me as they reached the highest point of Mecca, and returned to her while I was still in the same place. Then Gabriel left me. I returned to my family until I came to Khadija and sat leaning on her thighs. She asked, "O Abul Qasim, where have you been?" "By God, I had sent my messengers to look for you. They reached Mecca and returned to me." Then I apprised her of what I had seen, and she said, Rejoice, O cousin, and be firm. Surely by him in whose hand is Khadija's soul, I hopefully think that you will be the prophet of this ummah. When she got up and put on suitable clothes and went out to her paternal cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, who had become a Christian and who read books and had heard the traditions of the Torah and the Injil, she informed him what the Prophet had informed her and what he had seen and heard. At this, Waraka cried, Holy God, surely by him in whose hand is Waraka's soul, if you are telling me the truth, O Khadija, there has come to him the great Namus, Gabriel, who also came to Moses before. It is certain that he has been made a prophet of this nation. Go and tell him to be firm. Khadija then returned to God's messenger and told him what Waraka had said. So when the Prophet completed his i'tiqaf, he did as he was accustomed to do in Mecca, which was to circumambulate the Kaaba. Then while there, he met Waraka, who had also come to circumambulate the Kaaba. Thereupon he said, O my brother's son, tell me what you have seen and heard. At this, God's messenger informed him. So Waraka said to the Prophet, Surely by him in whose hand is Waraka's soul, you have been made the prophet of this nation. There has come to you the greatest Namus who came to Moses. Surely you will be called a liar. You will be hurt, driven out, and fought with. If I am alive that day, I will support the religion of God to the extent God only knows. Then he leaned near him and kissed the middle of his forehead. Then the Prophet returned home. So viewers, you can see that some basic questions which were raised on Bukhari's narrative, they stand answered. First, it can be seen that Ibn Hisham did not accept Zuhri's narrative the way it was recorded by Imam Bukhari. Yes, he just takes a very short part of that narrative and it only says that he had true dreams and he wanted to sit in privacy. That is all that he has taken from the narrative which was recorded in Bukhari. But now this narrative, which is recorded on the authority of Ubayd ibn Umair, according to Ustaz Javed Ahmad Ghamidi, it answers almost all the basic questions. So the first thing is that it is evident that the Prophet did not go to the cave of Hira for some meditation or muraqabah, as is evident from the Bukhari narrative. This Ibn Hisham narrative says that he would go there for i'tiqaf in the cave of Hira, and that too with his family. And this was his grandfather's tradition, and they would also feed the poor. So, of course, this question that he went there, he meditated, he was in the muraqabah, there was some spiritual exercise, there was no such thing. The second thing is, you can clearly see, is that the word tahannus is not even mentioned in this narrative. The word tahannus, which is a word which is very, very alien to the Arabic language, as we had pointed out earlier, it does not even exist in this narrative. The third thing is that the Quran was shown to the Prophet in this dream symbolically. It was not revealed the way actually something can be revealed. It was actually shown to him in the form of a book. So it was more of a symbol, and this now makes sense. Because now the Prophet's answer that I cannot read, it also makes sense. He was, of course, not conversant with reading and writing. So therefore, when Gabriel said to him that read, and his answer that I cannot read, it makes perfect sense. The fourth thing which is evident from this narrative is that there is no anxiety or worry which is shown by the Prophet, which was shown in the narrative that is recorded by Imam Bukhari, in which the Prophet became very disturbed. He came back to his wife Khadija and he said that have me covered, zammiluni, zammiluni. And this fear is something which never arises when the Almighty reveals any divine command to his prophets. The fifth thing also that becomes evident is that if he did not go to the Kaaba for the i'tiqaf, it does seem that it was because there were several idols that were placed there and he was not comfortable doing i'tiqaf there. Otherwise, the most probable place for him to do i'tiqaf was the Kaaba. But it seems that because of the idols that were placed in the Kaaba, he chose the cave of Hira so that this was a place that the i'tiqaf could be done in a peaceful way. The sixth thing in this regard is that although this narrative is a maktu one, which means that it is a historical narrative, we can see that as far as the narrative of Bukhari also is concerned, that too is a mursal narrative. Although it's not something which is directly from the Prophet, it is also a form of of a historical narrative. So both these narratives are historical in nature, and in the case of historical narratives, it is the daraya or the principles of interpretation that must be considered first, then the chain of narration itself. The seventh thing is that when the Prophet got up from his dream, he was appointed as God's prophet, and this was announced by Gabriel, which is a very correct logical sequence of events. Of course, he saw that dream, and when he woke up from that dream, he came out of that cave, then he actually encountered Gabriel, and Gabriel at that instance actually announced that you are being made God's messenger and that I am his angel. So all in all, Ustaz Ghamidi says that if this narrative is concerned, that it is basically something that answers all those questions, and hence it cannot be in any way argued upon. Now the question which Ustaz Ghamidi has addressed is that what exactly was the first revelation in the Quran which was revealed, because we know it could not have been Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq, because it was never revealed physically. It was just a dream that was shown to him, and more importantly, it was symbolic in nature, that a part of the Quran was being brought before him. So Ustaz Ghamidi says that Surah Fatiha is the first revelation. This is the only surah which does not have a background of revelation, and he has shown that how various phases of revelation pass in the life of the Prophet, in which various surahs were revealed. But as far as Surah Fatiha is concerned, it is devoid of any phase. It is as if it is at the start of his preaching mission, at the start of his whole endeavor of preaching, that this surah was revealed. So there are people who are always addressed, we know, in various surahs, who are present in Arabia, and for example, they are the idolaters, they are the people of the book, they are hypocrites, they are Muslims. But this is the only surah in which you don't have any addressee. It's basically an invocation. It's basically a dua, a supplication to the Almighty. And therefore we can say that this is the supplication, and the rest of the Quran is an answer to that supplication, because the supplication was a supplication to provide guidance, to receive guidance, and that is how exactly it happened. And for this reason, we find that it was also placed at the very start of the Quran. So in other words, we must understand that it's very logical the way Surah Fatiha begins with this invocation for guidance, and the rest of the Quran, which is placed after Surah Fatiha, is an answer to that call for guidance. Ustaz Ghamidi also says that the Quran itself portrays the first and the second instances of Wahi in Surah Najm. In the first of the opening part of Surah Najm, you will clearly see how Gabriel came very close to him, and then he revealed to him part of the Quran. And in the second instance, he was on the horizon and he communicated once again the second revelation to the Prophet. So in Surah Najm, we can see how the portrayal of the first and second revelation took place, and I will now read out Surah Najm before you. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَى ذُو مِرَّةٍ فَاسْتَوَى وهو بالأفق الأعلى ثم دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى فأوحى إلى عبده ما أوحى ما كذب الفؤاد ما رأى أفتمارونه على ما يرى ولقد رآه نزلة أخرى عند سدرة المنتهى عندها جنة المأوى إذ يغشى السدرة ما يغشى ما زاغ البصر وما طغى لقد رأى من آيات ربه الكبرى. The stars, when they fall, bear witness that your companion is neither lost nor has gone astray, and he does not speak out of his own fancy. This is but a revelation sent down to him. He was taught by an angel, mighty in power, towering in character, endued with wisdom. He appeared while he stood poised, being on the highest horizon. Then he drew near and came down within 2 bows' length, or even closer. The Almighty then revealed to his servant that which he revealed. His heart did not deny his vision. So, will you then quarrel with him over what he is seeing? And he held him once again near the farthest lote tree, close to which is the garden of repose, when the lote tree was being covered with that which was covering it. His sight did not falter nor lost its poise. He saw his Lord's great signs. So viewers, all in all, we can see that according to Ustaz Ghamidi, if this narrative of Ibn Hisham is accepted, then as far as the first revelation is concerned, it is a narrative which portrays a dream of the Prophet. And in dreams of the Prophet, everything is symbolic. And being symbolic, we have to understand that the Prophet was being introduced in his dream to divine revelation. And once he woke up from that dream, he was actually appointed by Gabriel, and Gabriel gave him this message from God that he is Gabriel and God is appointing Muhammad, or Prophet Muhammad himself, to be his messenger, and now he must get ready for this task of disseminating the truth to his people.